session. We are going to start this session sharp at 10:30 EST. Just 30 seconds, please. Okay, it is 10:30. Again, good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. Welcome to our session of the World Water Week, focused on connecting water disaster and climate change. This is going to be organized by the HELP, or the High-Level Expert and Leaders Panel Water and Disasters. This panel, HELP, has been working to connect the three issues of the disaster risk reduction, water, and climate change for over 20 years. I'm really glad you are joining this session because the connection of water, disaster risk reduction, and climate change have been one of the most important issues in the UN Water Conference in 2023. After the COVID-19, the how to handle the disaster, including biological disaster issues, have been a top priority of the leaders, practitioners, and academia. There have been an intensive discussion in the UN Water Conference, as well as in the preparation process, such as the Asia Pacific Water Summit. The outcome of the interactive dialogue number 3 has been full of the topics of the connection. And also we have had a very successful outcome of the Sendai midterm review framework in May in New York again. But if you go and take a look at the field practices, we are still seeing a large gap between the connection of the water, climate change, and disaster risk reduction. So this session is going to discuss how we can practically connect the three topics of water, disaster risk reduction, and climate change. I have invited 3 speakers, which are the known experts on these issues. First of all, I'd like to introduce Dr. Pablo Beres-Archua, the chair of the Global Water Partnership. He was also the state secretary of the water resources of the government of Argentina. I'm really glad, Pablo-san, to welcome you here to speak about how we can connect the 3 topics of disaster risk reduction, climate change, and water in every part of the world, because Global Water Partnership has members from over 190 countries, and it has a lot of field practices on those issues. So Pablo-san, welcome.
Hello, Kenzo-san. It is a real pleasure for me to be here and to be part of this session. I will be sharing my screen. Let me do so.
Yes, I can see the slide.
Okay, I think now you can see the screen fine, right?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So this is a key topic, as you were mentioning, and there are many issues that we can think of and we can connect because this is central to the consequences of climate change, and we are already experimenting worldwide significant consequences of extreme weather events and climate variability, and in many senses it is happening sooner than many people were expecting it to happen. And the consequences of that are both non-linear and complex. So let me start by saying that the connection between water and disaster risk reduction, I'm not able to move my presentation. Let me see why. Okay, now maybe. Yes, there we go. So the main idea that I would like to share with everybody here is that the concept, and it is somehow not completely well known by many, is that water is to adaptation what energy is to mitigation. So what we see from Global Water Partnership is that we need to work around this concept and to make it clear that as in the same fashion that we need policies for regarding energy for mitigation and to impact in the reduction of the emissions of greenhouse gases, the same thing has to happen with water, because in a major part, the consequences of climate change and variability has to do with water, and the response to that is to develop policies to be able to have adaptation in all of our systems. So let me share with you a little bit on what we mean by that. And for that, I will be pointing to this infographic. There are many more, but here you have an overview of the consequences of climate risks when you move to a world where we have a 1.5 or even a 2 centigrades, Celsius centigrades increase in global warming. And as you can see, if we concentrate on many of these dimensions, including extreme weather or water availability or sea level rise, the consequences are major. And what we will see is increasing costs, but in many cases, we will see changes, very significant changes in ecosystems, and of course in cities and in the well-being of the human race worldwide. And the numbers are very significant in many places, but also the consequences of the people, the way the economies are going to be impacted through nature and also through the developed and the built environment are, as I said before, non-linear and also complex. So how do we deal with that? How do we get water into the picture? How do we develop policies that are able to solve or to diminish the negative consequences? And I have to say, in many cases, they may also bring the possibility of opening up opportunities for improving, even improving the conditions of some populations. How do we do that? In order to do that, I'd like to share briefly, because I know we don't have a lot of time, this framework. And this is a framework that we have developed several years ago. And in fact, I am here mentioning one of my papers. This is from Water Science and Technology, where we have put an zoom into how to unpackage vulnerability and to be able to develop resiliency. So if you go from left to right, you will see that we can characterize what are the stressors and perturbations that are affecting our environment, our systems. And then we can open those up into three main categories: exposure, sensitivity, and resilience. So if you go from exposure, you can do many things to reduce the exposure of your system. And those have to do with, in all cases, with both the built environment and the socio-economic conditions and the biophysical conditions. Then there is the sensitivity factor. So different places have different capacities to dealing with those stressors, and also either to diminish their conditions or to increase their consequences. And then all the way to the right, you will have the consequences, which is the level of resilience of your system. In that case, you have the impacts, but then also you will have the capacity to develop adjustments and adaptations in the place that are able to deal with the consequences to, as I said before, diminish the bad consequences and increasing the possibilities of improving the conditions of life, but also maybe supporting the ecosystem functions in a better way. So this is a framework to think about it, and a lot of integrated water resources management, and what we would sometimes in GWP would like to call 2.0 integrated water resources management, are to do with how to improve these capacities for increasing resiliency in water systems. So this is a key point of our policies. This is a way of conceptually linking water with DRR worldwide. And let me very briefly say that when we see all of our actions globally, we can identify the diversity of policies that are needed, and also the level of need for data, for new models, for particularly early warning systems in different places of the world that are able to both improve and somehow give better conditions for decision making, even in a collective function, collective intelligence, but also for defining the investments in infrastructure and the level of changes that we need in governance for water. The second point, of course, is to identify two main issues if we want to focus on particular programs and how to deal with that. And one of them is floods and the other one is droughts. And we are very much involved in those, globally speaking. And if we want to do with climate change adaptation, then this is also a way to achieve poverty reduction and ecosystem conservation, and to support, therefore, the achievement of the SDGs, as we can all know. So let me point very briefly also to the evidence. And the evidence is very clear that, let me go back there. The evidence is very clear that we are facing extreme events. They are becoming more frequent. And also that for the main part, and this is globally speaking, but also I have picked one case, which is one country. So the graphic that you see in the upper part of this screen is global statistics, but then if you go down, you will see Germany. But I could have picked many others. And in all cases, what we'll see is an increment in the amount of cases and also the severity of cases. And this is, and I want to point this out very clearly, this is not, and this is why I picked Germany, we are not only talking here about the developing world, where we may see that many consequences have to do with the lack of investment in infrastructure or maybe poor policies, but this is happening all over the place. And we do have very severe cases in the developed world, in places like Europe and, for example, the US. So Global Water Partnership is now able to develop and to draw lessons from both the developing country, but also the developed world, that can be applied in many other places. This is a global issue. Coming back to what we are doing in very specific terms, I want to point out to the work that we are doing and we have been doing for many years together with WMO, the World Meteorological Organization. And we do have two very main programs. One of them is Integrated Drought Management Program, IDMP. The other one is the Associated Flood Management Program, the APFM. So these programs are already going on in many countries, and those are the key experiences that I was pointing just a moment ago, where we do have several lessons learned, and we are able to systematize the approaches and to also increase the level of effort to solve and to help to solve many of these issues at the global and at the local scale in many countries. So these programs have been able to show us, as I was saying before, that there is a new normal in many places, and it is key to understand what that new normal is about. And also that we need to manage that. We need to not only be able to describe the issues, but also to set up frameworks that are able to make decisions regarding that, to allocate resources, to react in terms of urgency, but also to develop the proper policies and proper investments. And in many cases, the capacity now using the new technologies like data and algorithms to react and to handle some of these systems. So these are several of the takeaway messages that we can draw from these two programs that we have been working on in many places in the world. So the positive news is that we are starting to see that many other institutions, and including private sector, are becoming aware of this. However, what we can say as a global opinion is that the level of effort, the level of investment is still very much behind what it is needed. Let me point out from the World Economic Forum that climate risks are perceived very high. in the last few years in any of the polls they are handling, and they include several of the key decision makers, particularly from the private sector. So this is a positive news. But again, as I said before, we are still very far away from the level of effort, the level of investment that we need to gather in order to solve these issues. And also in this, let me point out that the work that we are doing with WMO is increasing in priority, and we are a member of the effort to try to develop early warning systems all over the place. But however, we see that this is still far in the future in many places. So in order to increase our impact on the ground, and this is a part of the key messages that I would like to leave with my presentation, is that we do need the work that GWP is doing in the terms of including the other partners. And this is making sense, and also knowing from experiences in the past that if you don't have a participatory decision-making approach, if you don't include all the stakeholders, you are not able to develop resiliency. The only way to develop resiliency in the real term is to have a 360 approach and to include all the main stakeholders. The other main issue, as I was saying before, is that we are in full agreement and working together, and we need more effort to be gathered, particularly from the private sector, but also from public sector, in order to have early warning systems in all places. And we are still lacking that. And then last but not least, we support many countries in establishing these early warning systems, which are understood and implemented as an essential element. And this is a way of combining technical solutions with policies and with governance. So to finish this presentation, let me have a few conclusions regarding the future. A key one is that we need to keep working on a systemic approach. And when I say a systemic approach, this is drawing on all the lessons of our experiences, but being able to not react to some of the issues we are saying, but to work from the knowledge and from the data in order to have a system that can be dealing with extremes even before some of these extreme cases happen. And sadly enough, what we are saying in many places that we don't have that capacity yet. Then a second conclusion, in order to think ahead for the future, is that there are many new possibilities regarding technology and data. And we need to develop those partnerships, and we need to access, in particular, a lot of data that is available through the private sector, and also to mobilize the capacity, the creativity from all stakeholders to develop and implement technology. And let me, in that point, mention that we are already doing right now. It is already open, the Water Change Maker, what we call 2.0, which is a contest for identifying 10 key startups, globally speaking, dealing with climate issues, and even from the financial side. And we will be identifying them in the next few months and making them known globally, but also allocating resources for these 10 key cases to scale up, to grow. This is being done with several partners in different places of the world. You can find information regarding our Water Change Makers contest in our web page. Then 3 point is new governance. And this is very significant. In many places, what we see is that we have a very centralized approach to governance. We don't have the capacity in several places to include all the stakeholders, and this is always diminishing the possibility of developing and implementing our programs, and in general terms, the capacities for developing early warning system, but also to have broader policies for dealing with increasing resiliency and DRR. Last but not least, value and resiliency is very important. So we need to be able to develop increasingly better frameworks for allocating and for identifying the value of resiliency. How much is this in terms of even economic purposes, so that they can be included in the investment budgets of the public sector, but also they can be included in financial approaches and even the private sector as one of the objectives in terms of economic and financial value. And last but not least, we need to keep working on how to make more available to everybody what is the real global footprint of the consequences of lacking these systems and lacking these policies for properly dealing with water in terms of adaptation and in terms of improving resiliency, globally speaking. So with this very broad, but also, I believe, full of key concepts and messages, I really appreciate this opportunity. I am ready for dealing with questions or comments. Thank you, Kenzo. Coming back to you.
Thank you very much for excellent keynote speech, Pablo-san. We learned a lot. We started from the concept of the resilience and particularly with a focus on sensitivity, exposure. But also we have learned what the current status of the climate change and what these risks are at the field level. And as Pablo-san said, that the lack of the perception that climate change is, making progress very rapidly is one of the problems for all of us. And Pablo-san has mentioned several future actions, potential future actions that may help us to address the issues more properly in the coming years. I would come back to you with a bit of the questions, but before that, I'd like to ask the next speaker, Mr. Takahiro Konami, the Japanese Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transport and Tourism, to talk about the outcome of the Interactive Dialogue 3 of the UN Water Conference, what we call ID3. The ID3 has focused on resilience, climate change, and the environment. So we have a lot to learn from what Mr. Konami has to say. Mr. Konami, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you for introduction. I'm Takahiro Konami from the Ministry of Land Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism of Japan. I'm in charge of water-related international affairs. So is it my screen is correctly properly shared now? Okay, different from the tester. Yeah, so this is a very, very brief overview of the Interactive Dialogue 3 Water for Climate Resilience and Environment, SOS 2C, Biodiversity, Climate Resilience, and DRR. So it was probably some of you may know, co-hosted, co-chaired by Japan and Egypt, including 3 themes. One is the changing climate, and the second is resilience to water disasters, and the third is working for the future. This is a graphical recording, official graphic recording of the Interactive Dialogue 3. And I found that it's a very good, good looking, and I myself cannot explain in detail, but you can see the disaster risk reduction is one of the important pillar of the discussion of comprehensive water for climate, resilience, and environment. So this is the actual speakers of the Interactive Dialogue 3. I heard that this is one of the most attractive or most competitive session to be a speaker. So in total, 41 intervention was done after the co-chair's message and opening remarks. So this is after the session, this is a very brief co-chair's key messages of the Interactive Dialogue 3 to the Secretariat, including the 3 themes: changing climate, resilience, and working for future. and commitment and actions proposed by the presenters. And as a basis of the discussion, we, co-chair, Japan and Egypt, has proposed a kind of the framework of thinking of how to address challenges caused by the climate change, starting from risk awareness and finding the risks, and then design countermeasures after financing while attracting participation of the multi-stakeholders, and then make an implementation. It is a very simple framework, and I suppose this framework helped participants to arrange their thoughts before the intervention. And this is an official PGR's report of the Interactive Dialogue 3. And there is no time, not enough time to make a detailed explanation of this report, but important key is included, for example, COP28 or information system, water cycle integrator or IWRM or such or such. And there's a lot of important keywords, so please check afterwards the PGS summary, which is published in the official website of the UNEDESA. So, and this in this dialogue, a lot of water action agenda was committed by the participants. This is a one sample of the commitment by the government of Japan, which is the name is Kumamoto Initiative for Water, which was originally published at the fourth Asia Pacific Water Summit held in last April, which is committing quality infrastructure, which contributes both climate change adaptation and mitigation measures, along with financial commitment of approximately 500 billion yen over the next 5 years. So this is a report, final report of the Interactive Dialogue 3 at the plenary, which was delivered by both co-chairs. So this photo is a very symbolic photo, which shows a strong tie between Egypt and Japan. The left one is His Excellency Heinz William, the Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation of Egypt, and the right one is Ms. Yoko Kamikawa from Japan as a Prime Minister's special envoy. So reflecting this strong tie between Egypt and Japan, Japan has started communication with the Egyptian government to make a follow-up of the Interactive Dialogue 3 in parallel with the discussion of how to follow up of the whole water conference in New York. So we will use a proper occasion to make individual follow-up from the capacity of the co-chairs of the Interactive Dialogue 3. Please, I hope the participants of the dialogue to participate to their follow-up activities will be led by Egypt and Japan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Konami-san, for introducing what has happened in the Interactive Dialogue number 3 in the UN Water Conference. Of course, UN Water Conference outcome will be the foundation for actions in the future. So I'm really glad that there was a quite substantial discussion and outcome there. Now, I have a question to Yokota-san. Do we have the Indonesian representative here?
Unfortunately, not yet. So can you please, we only have 2 minutes, so can you please wrap up?
Yes, of course. What I would say about the 10th World Water Forum is that it will be on May 18th through 24th. So we have a bit more than 6 months now. And then I'm glad that the Indonesian government is focusing on connecting climate change, water, and disasters in World Water Forum. Also, an important event which is happening there is the Bandung Spirit Water Summit. That is the Global South-led intense discussion on water issues, particularly disaster risk reduction and climate change. And the former head of state and head of state and ministers will be invited there. So I would expect a lot from the 10th World Water Forum. Having said that, I would like to ask a bit of the very short comments from the Pablo-san, that you mentioned that IWRM version 2.0 is very important. So how are you going to deal with the water disaster and climate change issues through the IWRM 2.0?
Thank you, Ken, Susan. I will be very brief. I know we don't have a lot of time, but what we are doing is that we are developing and fostering new partnerships. So private sector is one of the key issues. We do know that there is many more data available than the one that we typically have, and we want to access those data. So we need to get in touch, for example, with companies like communication companies and TICS companies. And then also what we want to foster, as I said before, is the investment and creativity from the private sector. And again, I want to emphasize that we do have now open our Water Change Maker contest. And this is a global contest focusing on climate, the relationship between climate and water. And we want to find there where are the main companies, the new companies being working, and we want to scale them up. We want to mobilize our resources, our global resources, for concrete cases in many corners of the world where we can match the capacity of the creativity of new companies together with data and also with the policies from the public sector. So I know I can say many more things, and I have shared some of them in our PowerPoint presentation, but I wanted to point on these two issues because we think that those are key parts of the IWRM 2.0.
Thank you very, very much. So we have heard a lot from these two speakers, but the discussion will continue in this coming World Water Week, and also particularly COP28 in UAE. So HELP is going to organize a session in UAE also in COP28, and we look forward to seeing you all in the next few months. Thank you very much. The session is completed.
Thank you.